we had a way to make a living. I mean, we didn't make a very good living, but we always did. You know, there was always something coming in. You know, and
After 4 decades in the Montana wilderness, Tom Orr is being forced to leave. At 81, he can barely chop wood for 30 minutes without exhausting himself. His son, Chad, and family members are pressuring him to move closer to Illinois. They say it's for his safety. But there's more to the story. Wolf packs have killed animals near his cabin. Falls on ice have become dangerous. Tom's health crisis in 2024 was the breaking point. What his family discovered about his condition will shock you. The man who survived everything nature could throw at him is finally surrendering to age and reality. Tom Orr came into the world in March 1943 in Rockford, Illinois, a quiet place shaped by farms, long fields, and the spirit of the old American West. His father, Chike Orr, was already living that life for real. Chike spent his days traveling across the Midwest, performing in Wild West shows, pulling crowds in with trick riding and roping stunts that made people forget everything else for a moment. Tom watched all of this from the time he was small, and by age 7, he and his brother Jack were already learning how to balance on running horses and pull off tricks that seemed impossible for kids their age. The family didn't live fancy. Most of what they had came from hard work, and Tom learned early how to repair his own gear and help train horses. That simple life planted something strong inside him, something that would stay with him long after those early years passed. But the excitement of those shows came with danger. When Tom was 8, he watched his father break his arm during a roping demonstration in front of a full crowd. One moment, the tricks looked smooth, and the next, his father was on the ground in pain. It shocked Tom, and the fear in that moment stayed with him for years. Wild West shows weren't just entertainment. They were filled with gunshots, fast rides, and rope tricks that could go wrong at any second. As Tom traveled with his family through towns in Wisconsin and Iowa, he saw the beauty and the risk of that life over and over again. Still, he kept learning. By age 7, he already understood how to handle a rope and guide a horse, and he carried those skills like a badge through the rest of his childhood. At 15, that bold streak grew even stronger. Tom decided he wanted rodeo more than school, and his mother supported him in her own quiet way. She drove him to the edge of Rockford, stopped the car, and let him step out with nothing more than his bull rope, his rigging bag, and whatever courage he had inside him. She didn't hold him back. She didn't give long warnings. She just trusted him. Tom then hitchhiked all the way to Ohio, traveling nearly 300 miles with only $5 in his pocket. He slept at truck stops and relied on strangers to get him closer to where he wanted to be. That moment, that simple drop-off at the side of the road, became one of the first big steps in shaping who he was. But long before that decision, his childhood was already different from most kids. At 7, he and Jack were trick riding under their father's watch. Their father taught them moves like the back vault, where they leaped over a galloping horse and landed on the other side. Sometimes they landed on the ground instead. The dirt in Illinois was hard, and the falls hurt, but Tom kept getting back up. Those early tricks built core strength and a fearless attitude that pushed him deeper toward rodeo. By 15, competitions felt natural to him. Every fall, every bruise, every failed trick shaped him in ways school couldn't. Rockford itself became Tom's training ground. He and Jack roamed the countryside with no adults watching. They carried slingshots and hunted rabbits and squirrels. They fished in small creeks and stayed out for hours, sometimes for entire days. Nature became their playground and their teacher. That freedom made it almost impossible for Tom to sit still in school. His mind drifted to the woods, the fields, and the open air. Teachers didn't understand him, but his parents accepted that he needed the outdoors more than he needed a desk. It taught him survival, patience, and self-reliance long before he even knew what those words meant. By age 10, rodeo pulled him in even harder. He would sneak into county fairs, watching bronc riders fly through the air and land with dust rising around them. When he got home, he tried to copy them. One day, he climbed onto a stubborn steer in the barnyard with a makeshift saddle. The steer bucked so hard that Tom flew off and sprained his wrist. He could have quit, but he didn't. Instead, he felt proud. The injury felt like proof he belonged in that world. The next day, he was already back, trying again. Life on the road with his father shaped him even more. Cheeky's show schedule took them across Wisconsin and Iowa in an old truck, and Tom learned to be part of the act behind the scenes. He held ropes, helped prepare horses, and studied the performers. He learned how to read a crowd and how to stay calm when things went wrong. While other kids went to school every day, Tom missed weeks at a time because he was traveling. Yet he felt he was learning more from the road than from any classroom. Those miles turned him into someone who wasn't afraid of new places or new challenges. At 12, he faced one of the scariest moments of his young life. During a family outing, he tried to cross a swollen river. The water rose fast and pulled him off his feet. He drifted downstream and grabbed onto a floating log, holding tight for nearly 20 minutes. He fought to keep his head above water. Jack spotted him and pulled him out. Tom was exhausted and shaken, but he survived. That moment taught him how quickly nature could turn dangerous. It also showed him that survival often depended on quick thinking and pure will. That lesson stayed with him forever. By 14, nothing at school made sense to him anymore, so he made a choice. He walked away from formal education and focused entirely on horses and training. It wasn't a normal decision. Kids were supposed to stay in school until at least 16. But Tom knew he belonged in the open fields with animals, not in classrooms with chalkboards. He later said he never felt regret. The real lessons came from the life he lived, not from books. Everything changed again in 1958 when he was 15. With his mother's blessing, he stepped onto the side of the road and hitchhiked 300 miles to Ohio. The highway seemed endless. Some nights he slept inside truck stops. Some nights he barely slept at all. But every mile pushed him closer to rodeo. When he reached Ohio, he joined a small rodeo outfit as a complete beginner. He had nothing but hope, a bull rope, and a desire to earn his place. His first professional ride was on a 1,200-pound Brahman bull. The arena was dusty and loud. Tom climbed on, tried to hold his grip, and lasted 4 seconds before being thrown hard onto the ground. The bull stomped around him, and he crawled away, bruised and hurting. He earned $25 for that ride. For a teenager in 1958, that was a big amount. He spent a week recovering in a cheap motel because there was no medical care nearby. But instead of quitting, he used the injury as motivation. He kept riding, traveling from one town to another, sleeping wherever he could, and doing whatever it took to stay in the game. Then came one of the scariest moments of all. In 1959, during a rodeo in Michigan, he rode a bull named Iron Jaw. The bull gored him in the thigh, and blood poured down his leg. There were no doctors around. A local veterinarian stitched him up with 12 stitches. The next day, Tom was back in the chute getting ready to ride again. That toughness earned him respect. People in the rodeo world talked about that moment. They saw that Tom wasn't just someone chasing excitement. He was someone building strength through pain, turning every injury into proof that he belonged. By late 1958 and into 1960, his reputation kept growing. He got a spot with the Prairie Circuit Rodeo, competing in 20 events each season. His first big break came when he won $150 for a 7-second bronc ride in Indiana. With that money, he bought custom spurs, something every rider dreamed of owning. Those spurs became a symbol of how far he had come from that hitchhike with $5 in his pocket. He learned new techniques, avoided dangerous head injuries, and pushed his way up the ranks. By 1960, his name was known across the amateur rodeo world. Tom Orr stepped into the rodeo world in 1962 with a kind of confidence that felt natural, almost like he had been waiting for this moment since childhood. That year, he joined the International Rodeo Association full-time, and something sparked right away. He entered 15 bronc riding events and won 8 of them. People noticed the way he moved with the horse instead of fighting against it. Then he gave the crowd a moment they talked about for years, an 8.2-second ride on a wild horse named Thunderbolt at a Texas rodeo. Most riders struggled to stay on for even 6 seconds, but Tom held firm, and the ride set a local record. It also pushed him straight into his first national finals only months after he started. By the end of 1962, he was earning more than $10,000 a year from prize money and endorsements, which would be worth more than $100,000 today. His name began spreading through rodeo circles fast, and the fearless style he carried became part of his identity. As the years moved on, Tom kept sharpening his instincts. By 1965, he had created a move that no one else dared to try. He called it the suicide turn. It was a mid-air twist where he shifted his weight at the exact second the horse spun under him. Riders usually tried to stay centered, but Tom leaned into the chaos and somehow controlled it. At the 1965 IRA Finals, he used that move to score 85 points, one of the highest scores of the year. Fans loved it, judges praised it, and young riders tried copying it, even though most could not match his timing or nerve. The move became a legend on its own, and people mentioned it whenever his name came up. Tom was not the type to stay in one lane. In the mid-1960s, he stepped into bull riding and pushed himself through more than 200 events each year across 20 states. He had a habit before each ride. He stood still, closed his eyes, and pictured the bull's movement. That helped him reach a 70% completion rate, way above the average. But then came 1967, and a bull named Rattler changed everything. During an IRA qualifier in Wyoming, his shoulder dislocated mid-ride, the kind of injury that ends a career right there. But Tom refused to stop. A medic forced the shoulder back into place, and within 10 minutes, Tom climbed onto Rattler again and finished the event. He even placed third. Riders told that story for years because it showed the kind of grit they rarely saw in the arena. By 1969, Tom was only 26, but he had already become a household name in the rodeo world. He drew crowds, headlined posters, and still found time to help new riders. He showed them how to adjust the flank strap for proper balance and fair bucking. That small detail saved a lot of riders from injury and improved competition. His advice became part of rodeo training, and older cowboys still mention how much they learned from him. His leadership spread far beyond the arena because he shaped riders who would become stars in their own right. Then came the day that nearly ended everything. It was February 14, 1970. Tom was 27 and climbing onto an 1,800-pound bull named Woolly Bugger. The chute opened and the bull flew out with such force that Tom hit the arena rails within 3 seconds. The impact knocked him unconscious. His hand stayed trapped in the bull rope, and the bull dragged him nearly 50 feet across the dirt. Rodeo clowns ran in, risking their own lives, trying to pull the bull away. Spectators watched in silence as Woolly Bugger tossed and stomped Tom's limp body for almost 2 minutes. Blood soaked the dirt. He had a punctured lung, 6 broken ribs, and internal injuries that left him unresponsive. He stayed unconscious for 3 hours. That ride became the closest he ever came to dying inside a rodeo arena. The arena had no ambulance service, so someone rushed him to a hospital in a truck. Doctors drained fluid from his chest and repaired torn muscles. He stayed there for 3 weeks. The pain was so heavy that he drifted into hallucinations, seeing himself die in the arena dirt again and again. Rumors spread across rodeo circles that Tom had actually died, and friends started sending condolences. When he finally stood again, he carried more than broken bones. He carried fear, doubt, and a shift inside himself that he could not ignore. The injury left him with chronic back pain that lasted decades and forced him to change his riding stance. He avoided the most dangerous bulls from that point on. His results slipped. He felt the difference every time he climbed into the chute. Still, he returned to competition just a month after the accident. People could not believe it. His rankings dropped, but the fact that he walked back into the arena at all showed the depth of his spirit. As the years passed, the winters hurt more. His body no longer healed the way it once did. The pain, the fear, the memory of that holiday disaster pushed him toward another life. Slowly, he stepped away from the rodeo and moved toward the wilderness, where he would later build his quiet identity as a trapper and mountain man. The accident became part of his legacy, a reminder of how close he came to losing everything and how that moment shaped the rest of his journey. By 1975, Tom was ready to try something new. He landed his first major Hollywood stunt job. The scene required him to fall 15 feet from a moving wagon in a Western filmed in Montana. He hid custom padding under his chaps to soften the landings, and he performed the fall multiple times for $500 per take. It was good money for a rodeo cowboy. Directors liked that he brought real skill to the camera, and they began calling him for more work. Those connections opened doors and made him part of a small group of real cowboys used for authentic Western stunts. Then came another round of setbacks. In 1978, he had stunt credits in 3 films and was gaining momentum. But a lasso stunt in Montana went wrong and twisted his knee badly. The pain forced him to step away from Hollywood for a while. Later in 1982, a chase scene near Billings turned dangerous when his horse bolted and threw him into a ravine. He fractured his collarbone. That fall convinced him that scripted danger was no safer than rodeo danger, and he decided to leave that world behind too. Through the 1970s and early 1980s, his rodeo peak came in 1980 when he finished as runner-up at the IRA bronc riding event. He often placed in the top 10 and kept riding at a high level. But the injuries added up. Over his career, he broke more than 50 bones. Medical studies showed that rodeo riders faced an 89% chance of injury every season. And Tom lived proof of that. Broken ribs, concussions, torn ligaments, and long winters left him aching. To support himself, he picked up trapping in the off-seasons, a habit that later became part of his new identity. In 1984, Tom rode his last saddle bronc at age 41. By then, he had saved about $200,000. That money gave him the freedom to walk away and start fresh. His farewell event was emotional, filled with friends and fans who respected everything he had given to the sport. His retirement was not only about pain, it was about wanting a quieter life, one where he could hunt, trap, and live close to the land. That choice eventually shaped the legacy millions came to know when he appeared on Mountain Men. Tom Orr first married Janice Fraser in the late 1960s, back when his world was filled with rodeo dust and long roads that never seemed to end. Their son, Chad, arrived in 1971. Their daughter, Keely, came later, bringing a softness into the wildlife Tom carried on his shoulders. But her story ended far too soon. In 2015, at the age of 49, Keely passed away in St. Petersburg, Florida. Tom never shared the cause. He said it was hers to keep. Losing her while he was settling into his Montana life cut him in a way that stayed with him. It pulled him inward. Friends said he looked quieter after that year, almost like he was carrying something heavy he could never put down. Years earlier, long before that pain reached him, Tom had met Nancy at a rodeo after-party in Montana. It was the early 1980s. She had a nursing background, and he noticed how calm she was in a loud room full of riders. They clicked fast. They fell for each other even faster. In 1984, they married after a whirlwind courtship. Tom was 35, Nancy was 30, and she left her stable job to step into Tom's unpredictable life. Together, they chased something simpler, something off the grid, something that felt like freedom. That choice changed everything for them. When they moved to Montana, they went all in. For 17 years, they lived without electricity or running water. Winters hit hard. Summers were quiet, but full of work. Nancy helped Tom tan hides by hand, a slow process that took around 3 days for each deer's skin. She scraped them clean over open fires while Tom hunted and trapped. Their lives depended on what they could make with their own hands. Day by day, they built a rhythm together, turning chores into rituals and hardship into a bond that nothing seemed to break. But Keely's death in 2015 shook that rhythm. Tom slipped into a lonely place for nearly a year. He trapped obsessively. He turned to the forest the way some people turn to prayer. He refused therapy. He spoke little. Rumors spread about rifts inside the family, and friends whispered that Tom looked more distant than he had ever been. Nancy stayed close. She watched him work through the pain one trap at a time, one cold morning at a time. Tom and Chad also had their own struggles. Chad, now in his 50s, chose a life far from the wild comfort of the Yaak Valley. He stayed mostly in St. Pete, dropping by Montana only sometimes. When he visited, Tom tried teaching him trapping skills. Chad tried, but his city life didn't match the old ways Tom held dear. Their differences created distance. On Mountain Men, fans often noticed how their worlds didn't quite fit together. Still, Chad stayed in Tom's life. He returned whenever he could, even if it meant stepping into a lifestyle he didn't fully understand. By 1986, Tom and Nancy had taken their rodeo savings and bought 10 acres in Montana. They built their log cabin by hand. The work took years and pushed their bodies past comfort. But when the cabin finally stood on that quiet stretch of land, it felt like a promise. It marked the end of the rodeo days and the beginning of a peaceful but rugged life rooted deep in the wilderness. Starting in 1985, right after turning away from the rodeo world, Tom taught himself to trap in the Yaak Valley. Each year he set up 50 trap lines across miles of harsh terrain. Beavers and wolves were his main targets. At his peak, he earned around $5,000 a year selling pelts at auctions in Troy, Montana. Some years, the money dropped nearly in half, especially in the early 1990s when the fur market collapsed. Still, he kept going. The traps were more than income. They were a conversation with the land. They connected him to older trappers whose stories lived in every technique he learned. His brain tanning method became famous. He soaked deer brains in a 3-to-1 water mixture for a full day, letting the natural emulsifiers loosen the hide. Then he scraped, rubbed, dried, and smoked the leather over alder wood until it turned soft and tough at the same time. Each deer hide could earn about $200. He often said every deer had enough brains to tan its own hide. It was the kind of knowledge people respected because it came from patience and years of working alone. For over 40 years, Tom lived off-grid, hauling 9 cords of firewood every winter on a handmade sled behind his horses. The 1995 blizzard tested him like nothing else. Snow fell more than 4 feet. For 10 days, he was trapped in his cabin. No way out, no way in. He rationed venison and burned wood slowly to stretch every piece. Temperatures fell well below zero. When he talked about that year, he always said it was one of the hardest winters of his life. The wild brought joy, but also heartbreak. In 2010, wolves killed his trapping dog, Shadow. That loss hit him deep. He was used to danger. He respected predators. But this time felt different. After that day, he carried bear spray each time he stepped out and built spiked fences around the cabin. Losing Shadow changed the way he moved through the woods. Nancy played her own heavy part in their survival. She tended a garden that fed them through most of the year: potatoes, berries, preserves. Meanwhile, Tom carved bows from yew wood. They had 50-pound draw weights and were prized for their strength. People came from all over to learn from him. When the History Channel scouts approached him in 2011, he said no at first. He liked his privacy, but medical bills changed his mind. So he joined Mountain Men. The first season aired on May 31, 2012. Tom appeared in more than 100 episodes over 13 seasons, filmed across his 640-acre claim. Fans loved him because nothing felt staged. He hunted, built, and trapped right on camera. In 2015, viewers watched in shock as he pushed away a 300-pound black bear that confronted him at a kill site. More than 2 million viewers saw that moment. Tom later said he acted before he had time to think. That raw instinct became one of the show's most talked about scenes. But behind the scenes, things weren't always calm. He didn't always agree with co-stars like Eustace Conway or Jason Hawke. He disliked anything that looked too dramatic or polished. Fans later found out about those tensions through interviews and online discussions. Tom never liked being pushed toward theatrics. He wanted real work to stay real. In 2020, a fake obituary went viral claiming he had died. More than 50,000 fans reacted with grief before the family confirmed he was alive. His sister-in-law officially denied the rumor in December 2024. The whole thing frustrated him. It showed how fast a story could spread and how little control he had over his own image. By 2023, at the age of 80, Tom became a mentor on camera. He taught knife sharpening, hide work, and old trapping methods. His calm way of teaching brought a new kind of respect from viewers. The show leaned into his wisdom, filming his shift from active mountain man to elder guide. Over the years, he earned between $5,000 and $15,000 per episode, totaling around $400,000. He used that money to upgrade his cabin with simple, practical additions like a solar-powered water pump. His net worth in 2025 sits somewhere between $200,000 and $250,000. Not huge for a TV star, but perfect for a man who never cared about wealth. In January 2024, when he was 81, Tom faced a terrifying heart crisis. Late at night, he couldn't breathe. Snow blocked the roads. Nancy performed CPR for nearly 20 minutes. Paramedics reached him by snowmobile. Doctors diagnosed advanced congestive heart failure. He went unconscious for 3 hours. They gave him a defibrillator vest and told him he needed constant monitoring. It forced him to think about leaving the off-grid life he loved. Season 14, Premiering on September 3rd, 2025, will be his final season. Teasers show him chopping wood, the way he has done for 40 years, but now tiring after 30 minutes. At 81, he admits the woods demand more than he can give. The show calls this a defining crossroads. Fans feel it too. It marks the end of an era. Early in 2025, while cleaning a barn loft, the family found old rodeo trophies from the 1980s. Rust covered them. Dust coated them. Seeing them again reminded everyone of the life Tom rarely talked about. Behind every trophy was a story of injuries, long nights, and the pain of losing Keely. They became symbols of everything he carried but never said out loud. In 2024, a wolf pack killed a prized animal near the cabin. It was another sign that things in the valley were changing. Chad and others have urged Tom and Nancy to move closer to Illinois, where help is near. Falls on ice and rising wolf activity have made safety a real concern. After more than 40 years in the Yaak Valley, the wild is still beautiful, but no longer gentle. And now Tom has to decide whether to stay in the place that shaped him or leave for the sake of survival.